Have you ever wondered what it's like to go to school in the old days? If you're not familiar with this piece of Americana, the one-room schoolhouse was exactly what it sounds like. A school with one room, one teacher, and students of different ages all learning together. In this area of Kansas, rural country schools didn't get built and organized until the late 1800s, and this continued through the mid-1900s. Previous to that, it was simply homeschooling. Picture a wood, stone, or a brick building with a steeple and a bell. Inside, a single classroom with a potbelly stove set right in the middle for heating and cooking. Today, we're going to take you on a journey to IronHorse Ranch in rural Sumner County, Kansas. There, we will discover together what it was like in the old days. How did children get to school? What a typical day was like, and the basics involved in learning the 3 R's. At This Is Us Today, we are once again reliving the past. One-room schoolhouses. Join us. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Chapter 1. The story behind the story. In the United States, the concept of a little red schoolhouse is a stirring one. As one might think, the vast majority of one-room schools don't even exist anymore. They have either been torn down or simply have succumbed to time and nature. However, in a handful of places, and due to the dedication and hard work of people like Mike and Valerie, one-room schools still survive. This is the story behind the story. A decade ago, Mike worked for the local township grading roads, and often that job would require him to drive right by an old country school building. And when he did, he sometimes felt a connection. When the building was eventually scheduled to be demolished, his interest peaked, and that's when this local Kansas couple took it upon themselves to prevent this from happening. During this time, they discovered one additional school, and thus one became 2 schools. Over a period of a few years, they spent much of their time, money, and considerable effort to move these buildings to their rural farm property. After a lot of hard work and some long days, they opened up what's now known as the Country School Museum. As of this video, there are about 200 schools listed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. Historic one-room schoolhouses are being preserved and celebrated as symbols of frontier values. Chapter 2. How about a little background for you? As late as 1930, half of the nation's school children still lived in rural areas. Outside of the more densely populated towns, these country children also needed an education. As structures, and in the beginning, these schools were generally poorly lighted, poorly heated, poorly seated, and poorly equipped, either for comfort or education. Drinking water was mostly supplied from a well using a hand pump. Generally, it was the same as what kids had at home on the farm. Sanitary arrangements and toilet facilities were always outdoors and separate from the school itself. The teachers themselves were very special people. During the winter months, they would get to school early, get a fire started in that potbelly stove so that the building would be warm for the students when they got there. On many occasions, they would prepare a hot noon meal on top of that very same stove. Usually, this consisted of basic soup or a stew of some kind. They took care of their students and were always looking out for their health and welfare. In the very early days, at least in rural central Kansas, teachers were all men. The stages at the front of classrooms were higher then, as men tended to sit at their desks to teach. When war times hit, women had to take over the teacher role, and the stages typically got smaller and smaller. Female teachers stood at the blackboard to teach. This was a coal house. And over here, an outhouse. Chapter 3, a typical school day. A typical school day was 9 a.m. to 4, with morning and afternoon recesses of 15 minutes each and pretty much an hour for lunch. The older students were given the responsibility of bringing in water, carrying in coal or wood for the stove. The younger students would be given other responsibilities such as, cleaning the blackboard, taking the erasers outside for dusting, and of course, there were always other things to do, and they did what they were capable of doing. Chapter 4, Transportation. Transportation, if you could call it that, for a few children who lived too far to walk, was occasionally provided by a horse-drawn sulky. If there were several children, it was more of a wagon. Each of these could only travel limited distance, mostly due to time restrictions. Other students would ride a horse, and while school is in session, the horse was put out to pasture or corralled. Fact is, students and teachers alike most often walked to and from school. A 3-mile journey was not uncommon at all. Motorized school buses in the 1920s made longer distances possible. Gradually, one-room schoolhouses were replaced. Most one-room schools had already been replaced by larger schools by World War II, except in some of the most very rural areas. Chapter 5. One-room schools were once commonplace throughout rural portions of America. The one-room school was a success by every measure, even becoming a treasured symbol of education. It may seem funny, but in recent years, we have actually seen a revival of this format. The single, small classroom where kids learn everything together is back, and it could be the start of a revolution. Chapter 6, Finding the IronHorse Ranch. The schoolhouses we visited today are in constant need of repair and restoration. Presentation of this lost history always comes at a price, but IronHorse Ranch operates these schools as a not-for-profit organization. If you can find it in your heart and your pocketbook, please consider a donation and even a personal visit to the schools themselves. These donations help further the needed conservation of the buildings and the immediate surroundings so that they can remain a part of our rural history for others to see and enjoy. Please feel free to visit their website at www.countryschoolmuseum.org for additional information. Have a good one. Thanks for visiting.